So you got a call from Suge. Did anything like transpire from that?
Oh, he say Cal ain't big enough for me, him, and Puff.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Well, I say when you moving, because I just bought a house. I feel like we did a business deal. I was able to give him millions of dollars for Snoop Dogg. For me to be able to get the biggest artist in the world assigned to me, that let me know that I'm doing the right thing, and I'm doing the right thing by God. It wasn't me.
Suge Knight's Death Row Records was in turmoil in the late 90s, and this chaos left a power vacuum in West Coast hip-hop, one that Master.P and No Limit Records were quick to fill.
When I left Death Row Records, I signed with No Limit Records, which was the hottest rap label in the industry. They was the only niggas getting money in the industry. I got to say this because this is very important.
Please.
Puffy and them was rocking, but they wasn't getting no money like Master.P was.
By the time Suge Knight realized how dangerous Master.P was, the game had already changed. Though incarcerated, Suge underestimated Master.P, who was quietly building an empire.
I feel like we did a business deal. I was able to give him millions of dollars for Snoop Dogg.
When Death Row turned hostile towards Snoop Dogg, Master.P surprised the industry by saving Snoop's life.
So you got a call from Suge. Did anything like transpire from that?
Oh, he say Cal ain't big enough for me, him, and Puff.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Well, I say when you moving, because I just bought a house.
A secret conflict and power shift followed, reshaping who controlled hip-hop. Master.P's bold move changed the game forever. Now let's dive deeper into the events that led to this moment. Chapter 1. The phone call that changed everything. It was sometime in the spring of 1997, and Master.P, Percy Miller, was sitting in his office in Richmond, California, surrounded by stacks of CDs, fax machines humming, and two-way pagers going off like popcorn. Business at No Limit Records was booming. New albums were dropping almost monthly, and each one was climbing charts faster than the last. But this call wasn't about music. P picked up. On the other end was a voice, low, measured, heavy with implication. It didn't matter if it came directly from Suge Knight or through one of his people, the message was unmistakable. It carried the weight of Los Angeles behind it.
So you got a call from Suge. Did anything like transpire from that?
Oh, he say Cal ain't big enough for me, him, and Puff.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Well, I say when you moving, because I just bought a house.
California ain't big enough for me, Puffy and Master.P. That was it. No threats, no screaming, just a simple line. A warning, a challenge, a territorial marker drawn in the sand by one of the most feared men in hip-hop. P sat for a moment, staring out the window at the hazy California sun. Most people would have paused, maybe even packed their things and headed back south. After all, Suge Knight wasn't just a name, he had a reputation. He founded Death Row Records. He was the man who helped launch Tupac, Snoop, and Dre into superstardom, and the same man who had a long list of enemies, many of whom didn't live to talk about it. But Percy Miller wasn't most people. He hung up the phone. And then he picked up another. The very next day, Master.P made his move. Not to retreat, but to expand. Instead of backing away from Los Angeles, he leaned into it hard. He began laying the groundwork for No Limit's West Coast operations. Offices were opened, warehouses leased, phone lines burned hot with calls to DJs, promoters, and distributors. Word spread fast. No Limit wasn't just coming to California, they were taking it. He'd seen the writing on the wall. Suge's grip on the game was loosening after Tupac's death in September '96 and Suge's subsequent incarceration in early 1997, a result of a probation violation tied to the same Vegas night Pac was shot. Death Row had lost its crown, the empire was cracking, and the king was behind bars. P wasn't a gangster, he never claimed to be, but he understood power, he understood leverage, and more than anything, he understood timing. Then came the real power move. Snoop Dogg. Still under contract with Death Row but frustrated, isolated, and ready for a fresh start, Snoop had been drifting ever since Pac died. Suge was locked up, Dr. Dre was gone, and Death Row's once glossy image was now splattered with headlines about violence, lawsuits, and the feds closing in. Master.P saw the opportunity.
When I left Death Row Records, I signed with No Limit Records, which was the hottest rap label in the industry. They was the only niggas getting money in the industry. I got to say this because this is very important.
Please.
Puffy and them was rocking, but they wasn't getting no money like Master.P was.
He flew Snoop out to meet him. No entourage and no pressure, just two men talking business. P offered what Suge never did, freedom, ownership, and respect. I'll give you your masters, you just focus on the music, P told him. The phone call that was supposed to scare Master.P into submission had done the opposite. It sparked the moment he went from regional mogul to national titan. In that instant, the old rules of hip-hop changed. Brute force? That was yesterday. Business acumen, ownership, longevity, that was now. What Suge didn't realize was that Master.P wasn't just another rapper trying to move units. He was building an empire not just in music, but in film, fashion, sports, and television. And he was doing it quietly, legally, and with surgical precision. And with that, the tide turned. The sound of the South got louder. The West started listening, and a new era in hip-hop was born. Built not on fear, but on freedom. Chapter 2. Saving Snoop Dogg from a death row exit wound.
So you're recruiting him from death row, away from Suge,
Yeah.
right? And you talk to Suge in prison.
Yeah.
You guys you make him an offer to acquire a talent from his record label to your record label.
By 1998, Snoop Dogg was running out of options. Once the golden child of Death Row Records, his rise to fame had been explosive. Doggy Style had gone quadruple platinum, and his name was etched into West Coast rap history alongside Dr. Dre and Tupac Shakur. But the empire that built him was now collapsing. Tupac was dead, Dre had walked away, and Suge Knight, the Death Row's infamous CEO, was behind bars but still pulling strings. Snoop, isolated and frustrated, was caught in the wreckage. Contracts bound him, lawyers circled, and every creative decision had to go through a man sitting in a cell. Suge's grip, even from prison, was still tight, too tight. It wasn't just business anymore, it felt personal. Paranoia grew, loyalty fractured, and Snoop Dogg began to consider a path that would have been unthinkable a year earlier, walking away. Snoop knew leaving death row was shaky. Suge had soldiers, the threats were real. One wrong move and you could get clipped, and Snoop knew that. He had watched what happened to people who crossed Suge. The threats weren't just industry gossip, they were real. Suge had soldiers on the outside, men who saw leaving death row as betrayal, not business. And Snoop was seriously considering something even more dangerous than walking away. He wanted to fight back. He recorded a track, a diss track, one that didn't mince words. One aimed squarely at Suge Knight himself. People in the studio that night tried to talk him down. Friends, engineers, even security. Everyone told him the same thing, don't do it. But Snoop was done being polite, done living in fear, and for a moment, it seemed like he was willing to risk everything, career, reputation, maybe even his life to send a message. But the track never dropped, because someone else stepped in. Master.P.
He was asking me what I was doing next, and I was about to do an album called Death Row. He was like, hold on, bro, you don't need to do that. Give me a few days, let me figure it out.
Word about Snoop's situation had been circulating through the industry. By then, Master.P had already solidified himself as one of the most strategic minds in the game. He wasn't just running No Limit Records, he was building an empire with precision and patience, and he saw something in Snoop, more than just talent. He saw a man who needed saving from a label, from a contract, and from himself. Master.P made the call. Not to a lawyer, not through intermediaries, he went straight to Suge's circle, the same men who had once protected death row with fists, guns, and silence. He didn't beg, he didn't threaten, he didn't negotiate from weakness. He made an offer, though Suge Knight later countered this.
And we was gonna do my record, the whole nine. So Master.P countered and was like, I'll give you a 3-album deal. I'll get you out of your relationship with Suge Knight. I'll get you your publishing back.
He put millions on the table to buy Snoop out of his contract. Not as a flex, but as a solution. And he did it the only way it could have worked, with respect. Respect for the street code, respect for the history, but firm enough that it was clear. P wasn't a man to test. The message was simple. Let him go. I'll take care of him. He's not your problem anymore. And surprisingly, maybe even miraculously, it worked. For once, there was no violence, no retaliation, no bodies, just a quiet agreement and a silent understanding that the game had changed. The era of intimidation was giving way to the era of enterprise. Snoop signed to No Limit shortly after, and just like that, Snoop Dogg, one of the biggest rap icons alive, signed to No Limit Records in 1998. It was a move no one saw coming. A southern label saving a West Coast legend. A boss played chess while others were still stuck in checkers. It was more than a business deal. It was a rescue mission. Master.P didn't just offer Snoop a new label. He gave him something far more valuable, freedom, creative freedom, legal freedom, personal freedom. Under No Limit, Snoop released A Game Is To Be Sold Not To Be Told in 1998. The sound was different, the vibe more southern, but the message was clear. Snoop had survived, and he owed that survival not to luck or lawyers, but to one man who saw beyond the moment and understood the bigger picture. Master.P had pulled off the impossible. He got one of hip-hop's biggest stars out of death row alive, with a future intact. And in doing so, he didn't just save Snoop, he rewrote the rules of the music industry. Chapter 3. No Limit versus Death Row was business versus bloodshed.
I heard you say that you just saw how different the program was run by Master.P. Like, what are some of the first things that you saw that let you know, like, oh, this different how they doing it down here?
They were soldiers, for real, organized, structured, and them didn't play. And P was serious about his business.
The rivalry wasn't about sound, it was about structure. By 1998, two powerhouses had emerged in hip-hop. Death Row with its iron grip on West Coast dominance, and No Limit rising fast from the South like a storm. But where Death Row built its kingdom on fear, intimidation, and control, Master.P was quietly building something far more dangerous, a machine. Inside No Limit, everything had a system. Albums were turned around in weeks, producers worked in rotation, visual branding was tight, gold tanks, pen and pixel covers, the works. Artists didn't just rap, they earned. Master.P paid his team up front and let them own their masters. At Death Row, it was different. Contracts were cages. Tupac died broke. Dr. Dre had to sue for his freedom. Snoop nearly lost his life trying to escape. Master.P didn't need fists or threats, he had leverage, and for the first time the streets saw a new kind of power. Not bloodshed, but business. Suge had soldiers, P had systems, and that made No Limit even more dangerous. Chapter 4. C Murder steps in. But business alone wasn't enough to survive in that era.
Well, the motivation was there to go to talk to Snoop, because that's when he had just been released or signed his rights to P. And so, but he was being disrespectful at the time.
Just weeks after Snoop signed with No Limit, rumors started swirling. Death Row loyalists weren't happy. Some even tried pressing Snoop in a studio parking lot, testing whether he was really protected. The message was clear. Walking away from Suge came with consequences.
He was at the show, and the Montreal came to the door, and C Murder walked up to the door and was like, "God, here, this is No Limit, y'all ain't want it." And Master.P seen him, he was like, "Nah, don't trip, see, let him in."
This brings in C Murder, Master.P's younger brother who had always been raw, gritty, direct, and unfiltered. And when he heard about the parking lot incident, he didn't wait for approval. He showed up and made the line clear. "Snoop's with us now. You try that mess again, you got a real problem." It wasn't about posturing, it was about family. This wasn't just music anymore. No Limit wasn't a label, it was a shield. The message spread fast through the industry. Snoop had been claimed, and Death Row, for all its reputation, suddenly found itself facing a new kind of army. One built on loyalty, not fear. Chapter 5. Pastor Troy disses and unwritten rules. As No Limit grew, so did the target on its back. By 2002, Master.P's name had become a symbol of independence and control. That kind of power made people uneasy. It made some jealous, and it made some reckless.
Basically, starting this beef with Master.P was just something to do.
I think he thought I was gonna rap back with him.
That's what he wanted. No, that's what he wanted. In my belief.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Right.
I've never done that.
Pastor Troy, a fierce Atlanta MC with a reputation for speaking his mind, dropped a diss aimed squarely at No Limit. The shots were personal, direct, loud. But the response? Silence. Master.P didn't flinch. He didn't answer in interviews, didn't fire back on a record. He didn't need to, because behind the scenes, the message was delivered another way. Troy later admitted he caught heat for that track. Club bookings got shaky, opportunities dried up, people started backing away. He never dropped a follow-up diss. Master.P had a rule. You don't come for the tank unless you're ready for the blowback. It was a quiet power, scarier than shouting, the kind of power you feel, not hear. Chapter 6. Master.P's move from projects to the Penthouse.
Death Row can be bigger than Motown, or Sony, or Warner Brothers.
Death Row is gonna be the biggest record company there is.
In the late 90s, when Death Row Records was starting to get riddled with legal battles, internal feuds, and Suge Knight's incarceration, a power vacuum cracked open in West Coast hip-hop. And while most of the industry stood frozen, watching the empire fall, Master.P and No Limit Records saw opportunity. They didn't just fill the void, they rewrote the rules.
I grew up in the projects in New Orleans, Callio projects, and grew up in poverty. And I realized that the one thing was the only way we could make it out of here, I couldn't get a record deal. I needed to do something to be able to take. I was living in a household with 12 kids.
To understand how Master.P ran his business, you need to understand the man behind the name. Percy Miller, known to the world as Master.P, didn't just break the mold, he rewrote the blueprint. Born and raised in the infamous Callio projects of New Orleans, one of the toughest housing projects in America, Master.P's early life was marked by poverty, crime, and a city drowning in neglect. But even then, there were signs that he was cut from a different cloth. Unlike many aspiring rappers of his era, P didn't start his grind with a mic in his hand. He started it with a vision and a cash register. In 1990, after the tragic death of his grandfather, Master.P received a $10,000 inheritance, a sum that most in his position would have spent trying to escape the streets, but P saw it differently. He saw it as seed money. He moved to Richmond, California, a rough suburb of Oakland, and opened a small record store called No Limit Records. On paper, it looked like just another mom-and-pop shop, but to Master.P, it was a launch pad. He used the store not just to sell music, but to study the business. He watched what moved off the shelves, which distributors had power, and how the game was being played.
Now everybody say they want to be independent.
Yeah.
But back then, everybody wanted to be on a label deal. That was a dream, right?
I'm gonna sell my CDs out the trunk of my car, and I'm gonna go to every city, every hood out here, from Atlanta to Texas to Chicago to New York, and I start selling my CDs out the trunk of my car.
This was the do-it-yourself hustle before it became a trend. Master.P wasn't chasing a record deal, he was creating a label, and that mentality made all the difference. By 1995, after relocating back to New Orleans, No Limit Records evolved from a regional curiosity into a national force. With a keen eye for talent and an unrelenting release schedule, P signed hungry, gritty rappers like C-Murder, Silk the Shocker, Mia X, and eventually Snoop Dogg, after his fallout with Death Row Records. No Limit was pumping out albums almost monthly, each one packaged with Pen and Pixel's signature hyper-glossy, diamond-studded covers and the now iconic gold tank logo. These weren't just albums, they were blueprints for street domination. No Limit was a factory, fast, consistent, and profitable. Their records weren't just selling, they were charting and then going platinum. In an industry that was traditionally gate-kept by East Coast execs and L-Power brokers, a black-owned Southern-run label was now running laps around the majors. But the rise of No Limit wasn't without tension. Back in Los Angeles, Suge Knight, the fearsome co-founder of Death Row Records, had dominated the early 90s rap scene with artists like Dr. Dre, Tupac, and Snoop. But as Death Row began to implode from legal troubles and internal drama, Suge couldn't ignore the new empire rising from the South. Master.P's growing influence and especially his poaching of Snoop Dogg from Death Row sent shockwaves through the industry. This wasn't just a business move, it was a power move. While Suge's empire was rooted in intimidation and street muscle, Master.P's was built on paperwork. He structured his deals like a mogul, not a gangster. He retained ownership of his masters, cut distribution deals that kept profits in-house, and reinvested every dime into expanding his reach: film, clothing, sports management. By the time 1998 rolled around, Master.P wasn't just a rapper, he was a business juggernaut, landing on Forbes lists and redefining what it meant to be a hip-hop CEO. Chapter 7: The Legacy They Feared. It wasn't just Suge who had a problem with Master.P.
We a couple blocks up from each other.
Right.
Do you think if it was beef, it would have been a walk? Let's be honest. I like them dudes, man. I was happy for them. Dude, you see, I showed them dudes love. Everywhere I got out, shout out to Cash Money, man, for doing what they gotta do. I respect that they come from my hood. I wanna see them win, I wanna see them eat.
Behind closed doors, Birdman, Puffy, and others whispered his name with a mix of admiration and resentment. Because P didn't play by the rules. They were used to labels built on favors, flashy advances, and legal traps. But P, he did it clean, and he did it better. He paid his artists, gave them ownership, made them bosses. While others built their empires on debt and dependency, P built his on freedom. He never needed a cosign, never courted controversy. He just kept growing: music, movies, merchandise. The tank kept rolling, and the industry couldn't keep up. That's what scared them. Master P proved you could succeed without stepping on anyone. No beef, no bullets, no headlines, just business. And in doing so, he exposed every other exec who had taken shortcuts, exploited artists, or sold lies. He didn't play the game, he rewrote it. In the end, Suge Knight's empire collapsed under its own weight, but Master P's empire, it evolved. From music to movies, from projects to Penthouse, he didn't just survive the war, he rewrote the rules of it. Chapter 8. The beef never fully died. The years passed, no limit shifted, death row faded, but the echoes of that war, they never truly disappeared. Old school death row affiliates still throw shadows in interviews, never naming names, but letting the tension breathe. Comments lit up. That's about P, some said. Others nodded in quiet disagreement. It was proof that even decades later, the wound still stings. Because Master P didn't just beat Suge, he did it without swinging, without threatening, without even raising his voice. He signed Suge star artists, expanded into his territory, and built an empire while death row unraveled. No shots fired, no blood spilled, just checkmate. And that's what makes the story so legendary. The beef never truly ended because the loss was never just personal. It was structural. It was the end of one era and the birth of another.